you that don't know me, my name is Tori and I'm the president of UEA Headucate this year. And we are very pleased to be hosting our first virtual event. And it's taking place in the summer and a little bit differently than we would usually run our panel discussions. For those of you that know, we would usually have everyone like sitting in a nice circle and people able to raise their hands and ask things throughout. But obviously today we're doing things a little different. I will soon hand over to Jaden, who is going to be our lovely host for this evening. She is our new Equality and Diversity Officer. First, I just wanted to, if we go to the next slide, just wanted to tell you guys a few things before we start. Thank you all for keeping your mics muted. And I just wanted to say thank you again to all of the panelists who have volunteered to speak on these topics that are really important. And thank you for everyone for coming as well, whether you're UEA staff, student, from the Student Union, or whether you're from another university, or whether you're just here to watch. And just to mention, because we are talking about topics like mental health and things that might kind of touch people, please make sure that if you're feeling a little bit stressed or by anything that we talk about, take some time away from the screen. But remember that you've got family and friends that are there for you, and that we're also going to give some information at the end about places that you can go for support as well. We're also going to be advertising new events soon. We're going to be running some workshops that are aimed at university students, targeted at helping them getting through the summer, and linking things to COVID, looking at making little crisis plans and making it really interactive. So yeah, we'll be releasing some information on social media about that soon. But I will hand over now to Jaden, and I will be quiet, and I think our panelists will introduce themselves in a bit.
So hey everyone, welcome to the panel discussion. Super excited. So first of all, we'll begin with opening statements. If the slide wants to go, okay. So we'll begin with opening statements from our panelists. So we just want to know who you are, what do you study, who you're representing today, and why you've joined this panel. Anyone can begin the opening statement. So yeah, feel free to jump in. Whoever wants to begin.
If you just go by the order on the sheet. Hi, my name is Jake. I am a student of international relations and politics. Next year, I'm doing a research master's looking at the work of the Women and Equality Select Committee in Parliament. Today, I'm representing two factions. One, Norwich Nightline, which is the Norwich branch of Nightline, the students there, where I'm the external coordinator. I'm also representing the Nightline Association, which is the national branch, to which I am the regional coordinator for the nightlines within the regions of the east of England, London, and the southeast. I've joined this panel because Nightline is pretty self-evident. Though we don't market ourselves as a mental health service, we deal with a lot of calls that are to do with mental health, and I think it's very important that we be part of this discussion.
I think I'm next on the sheet. Hi everyone, my name is Afia. I'm the Student Union Ethnic Minority Officer. I apologise for any background noise. So basically today I am representing the Student Union, and as the only POC person currently representing the role of Ethnic Minority Officer. I'm the outgoing officer for UEA Nursing Society. I've never been on one of these Headucate panels before, so I'm really excited to see how everything works and to hear from everyone. That's basically me. Oh, I completed a degree in international relations and French, and I'm hopefully starting a new role in a job soon that I can't give anything away for currently because nothing's set in stone yet, but I'll be hopefully working soon.
doesn't really matter which order we go in. Anyone can go next.
I'll go next then. Hiya, I'm Lou. I'm a second year mental health nursing student, and I'm here representing the Nursing Society. I'm the outgoing mature student rep and the incoming equalities and diversity rep. And so why have I joined this panel? A, to represent the Nursing Society, but as a mental health nurse, obviously mental health is very important to me. But as nurses as a whole, you know, your mental health and your physical health are very, very intrinsically linked. So as a cohort, regardless of whatever our field may be, actually mental health is important, just as important to us as physical health is. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Lou. Eddie?
Okay, I'll go next. So yeah, I'm Eddie. I'm just finishing up my degree in education, and I'm from UEA Sexpression, so I was president for the last academic year, so I think I finished being president like 5 days or something. Joined this panel because I've done a lot of work with Tori before, and Headucate and Sexpression do a lot of work together because we both teach in schools, and mental health is important, so that's why we're here to talk about it.
Thank you, Eddie. And I think we have one more panel representative to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Toby, and I'm here representing TakeFive UEA. We're a mental health group that help people with their general mental well-being and their self-care, usually through video games and lots of social interaction. We've been running lots of events online throughout the COVID period, so we've been trying to make sure that UEA students are sort of provided still with that space where they can get some self-care and get some support at a slightly lower end of the scale. So yeah, that's why I'm here to try and help out where I can and answer any questions, particularly about the university. But yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. I think we have one more panelist to introduce themselves. Morna, are you there? I'm not sure if she's here. So should we go on to the next question, Jaden?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. So now we'll begin with the first question. Okay, so to the panelists, what implications do you think COVID-19 has and will have on our population's mental health? We can begin in the same order that we started the introductions in, if that makes it easier.
It sure does. We'll do that then.
Yeah.
I'd say from my perspective, it would probably be you've got a lot of very complicated things happening at the same time. You've got a very different economy that people are going to come back to. You've got this conception of the new normal. You've got this kind of differing university experience, and I think widely there's going to be a lot of new mental health challenges, particularly I would say in the long run. At the moment, I think things are more centered towards increased anxiety, stress, those kind of feelings that people might be having now. But as we move into the next year and the next 2 years, we're going to have to kind of live with the consequences of what this whole lockdown period has eventually developed in people. If I am
Yeah, that's okay. I'll follow you on. I know, I completely agree. When I first read the question, it did, to be honest, it did overwhelm me. I was like, what implications do you think COVID-19 has had on our population's mental health? And there's so many different factors and layers to that. So if I speak as a university student, as a final year university student, initially there was so much readjustment to moving back home, working from home, and then from a personal point of view, my mum was abroad, then she was abroad for a different reason and she was supposed to come back, then the borders closed, then we had to had difficulties with repatriation flights. That was one thing, and then we have lots of family members that work in the NHS were affected in a different way, in the sense of that work became very hectic. There was a lot of PTSD when people went home, and kind of, well, I think it's different for everyone, but I think personally for my dad, he was like very much like, I don't want to talk about it at home because it's distressing. Like, I don't want to bring any work home, any emotions from work home. I think for other people, it was kind of like the shocking difference between work and home. And like Jake said, like, the implications of the economy has an effect on everyone. And for some people, it will definitely be worse than for others. And for recent graduates, kind of just a lot of readjustment, not even readjustment, like a lot of resilience in order to kind of overcome the fact that maybe kind of grad schemes that they were hoping for have frozen recruitment. There's a lot of uncertainty that you just kind of have to learn to be resilient throughout, which people have maybe previously never faced in their life before. And I think a lot of people feel like a lot of things are out of their control, which it is right now, and no one really knows how things are going to go down, which obviously comes with its own uncertainty. Personally, what I would say is like the thing that I've taken out of this whole roller coaster of 4 months is like, take every day at a time. That's where I would leave it and let someone else continue.
Yeah, I think, like the two before me, everyone's facing this differently. I think the big thing I'm seeing or I'm experiencing is a lack of control, because we can't control this, and it's that hidden, it was the hidden danger, I suppose. We can't see coronavirus, we can't see people who are walking around carrying it, or we can see people when they've been ill, and so it's a bit like having a hidden enemy. And again, that's how do you combat that? So people are afraid. People are afraid of getting it. People are afraid of passing it on. There's obviously lots of people that aren't too afraid either, because but the things that I'm seeing from people out there, I'm on placement at the moment, on mental health wards, and seeing that it's this. People call it this new normal, but this isn't normal at all whatsoever. You couldn't write this, 3-4 months ago. We had so much freedom. And then we literally got locked into our houses. Either, in my case, me and my dog. So I thought I was quite good on my own. I thought I didn't really like that many people, and I was completely wrong. And actually, even that interaction of going to uni and seeing your mates and having a bit of a chat, actually that was really, really important. And then on the flip side, you've got people who are stuck in a house 24 hours a day with the same people, and you've got the stresses and the strains that go along with that. Then you've got students going back home. You've got some students that haven't been able to go back home. Again, so it's to say, well, as has been said before, there's so much difference, so much variety. This is going to have long-term implications to the whole of society. Whether that's because they've been either touched by COVID themselves, or they've had family members or friends get ill or die from it, or actually maybe even just the fear of it themselves. And actually, our brains can make up. I think our brains can make up a worse disease than the actual thing itself, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone's mentioned like some of the more obvious and more negative things, but from like a positive viewpoint, I can just speak like for me and my friends. I don't know for anyone else, but I found that it's really given us some time to spend with ourselves and time to reflect and realize what's actually important in life and what's not important. And I think as well, it's changed the way that we socialize with others. I feel like I've been able to reconnect with people who I knew from high school, or people who have like moved away and live far away, because now we can use Zoom. But normally, if I was looking for social interaction, you'd meet with the people who live in close proximity to you. So I think that's sort of a really positive side of things. And in terms of like having more free time, being on furlough, whatever people are doing, it's given us more time to like invest in hobbies. Everyone's baking now. Everyone's cleaned their house. Probably more than once. It turns out this has gone on for much longer than we thought. So I do think there will be some positives to come out of it, and I do think it will change the way that we live, and maybe, I don't know, maybe people will come out of this having reconnected with people, but also valuing themselves a bit more and the people around them?
I don't know if I can talk from like the population's perspective as much, but on a personal level, I as we're sort of having lockdown begin to be lifted a little bit, especially with all the new regulations that are coming in on the 4th of July, I'm feeling a little bit anxious about how that's all going to work. And then obviously, I think whenever we go on social media, as COVID's become such a political issue, it feels a little bit like there's both sides saying these different things, and it's difficult to know which one you can really listen to. So actually, even though we're talking about this new normal and this getting back to the pubs, getting back to your jobs, all the things like that, I'm still feeling quite nervous about leaving the house, and I imagine I'm not alone in that feeling. So I'll be interested to see where people then go and how we can tackle people wanting to be more reclusive, particularly if like Eddie said, they've actually quite enjoyed that time to be away from things and just having that time to themselves. So I think that's going to be an interesting perspective that we're all going to come to grips with. Equally, you might also just want to get out there and see all your friends and go down the pubs and get back to your jobs. But yeah, that's kind of where my head's at the moment.
Okay, I think that's. Oh,
I think our last panel attendee did manage to get in, actually. So do you want to quickly introduce yourself if you're there?
Hello?
Hey. Hi.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, good. My name is Monica. I'm a committee member from UEA ACS. In regards to the question, I think at the start of lockdown, everyone was kind of like in a frenzy. Everything had to change. So, I feel like we're all in a kind of state of panic. But like someone mentioned, that we get to kind of indulge in ourselves and look at things that we kind of overlooked before, like the state of our houses and like things that we enjoy doing but we never had time to do. But then again, there's some people that were stressing about their bills and feeding and food and even just catching COVID and what that would mean for that family. But I think now everything's starting to ease and the sun's out. Everyone's getting the benefit from it. There's no more school, there's no more work. The stresses of life have kind of reduced a lot. So I think that has benefited a lot of people with families, especially, people might have never had time to take care of their family the way they have now, and kind of just look at everything in a different perspective. So, yeah.
okay, thank you for joining us. And yeah, I definitely resonate with what most people said. And like, I feel like personally, for most people, there's been positive. Some see this experience as more positive. Some people see it as more negative. So it just depends what your situation is. But yeah, so we'll move on to the second question. Okay, so the second question is, with physical distancing, much of the daily interaction is done through non-contact communication, so like through social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever. How can mental well-being be promoted further using social media and traditional forms of media?
So I guess I'm starting that again. I haven't really got much to say to this question from like a Nightline perspective, because we don't do much of this. We just provide a service and that's about it. At the moment for us, it's kind of just getting back to providing the service we had before rather than focusing on this kind of stuff. But I would think from the ways we can support each other on media, of that. It's a good step in the right direction. People try, I'd say it might be good for people to try and replace the routine they've had, the interaction they've had, with more digitalized versions of that. So for instance, video calling, things like that. What will be interesting to see in the long term is for people who perhaps miss like face-on-face interaction with people, what the long-term impacts of perhaps using text-only based things might be. Whether that makes people feel better because there's more accessible to other people, or whether that makes people feel worse because there's, I think I'm not alone in this, that there is less opportunity to empathize and to show human emotion over something like a text or a Facebook message.
I'll lead on. So to address the first part of the question, so with physical distancing, much of the daily interaction is done through non-contact communication. I think there are definitely been some situations where the social distance aspect has made people dealing with mental health issues and people dealing with certain circumstances much more difficult. Like, for example, people's grandparents who have passed away due to COVID-19, or just family members who passed away. You want to be there in person to support that family member, to support that friend, but obviously due to either your high risk or just due to social distancing measures, you're not able to do so. So I think there's definitely been some situations where the fact that Zoom is free and the fact that we can video call hasn't replaced our need for physical contact, because we are humans at the end of the day. But I think there has been some situations in which social media has played like a massive positive part in mental health. I think a lot more therapists and people who do provide mental health services have been able to see more people, just due to the fact that it's over the phone calls, kind of like administrative processes have been slightly made more efficient, more reduced. I know it's not the same, but personally for me, that's something that I found has been really beneficial with social media. Like the fact that someone that I know who gives social, like who works in the student sports office, actually, he was just saying like, oh, I've been able to slot in so many more people and so many more calls, and that's one thing. Another thing, I think social media has been really powerful. There's been a lot of people kind of due to this time who've a lot of brands, but also websites. Like, I actually want to quote this Instagram page. Actually, it's called the self-care squad, the underscore self-care squad, which is like very minor. Like, it's a page dedicated to mental health, but they've been kind of giving out tips and tricks on how to look after yourself better. And I think a lot more people have been doing that, and there are pages dedicated to different issues that we don't get to talk about every day in our university life. Like, for example, like how mental health affects the BAME community, the Black community, different POC communities. So I think social media has played a really good part in diversifying the conversation around mental health during this time, because people are much more on it, and like a lot of service providers are now using this as their like main tool to promote their services. So yes, does someone else want to continue?
Yeah, I think with this, I think it's really important that we, especially as a university, remember that actually there's a lot of generations in our students. So, I've seen, with friends and their youngsters, the youngsters have loved the whole social interaction via social media. They're used to doing this kind of stuff. I didn't even know what Zoom was before this all happened. So, and it's a huge kind of learning curve for the students, the academics. But as I say, we've got some of our students are in their 70s, 80s plus. So actually, they're not going to be they may or may not, that's me making a judgment, they may not be involved in the social media. So actually it's then looking at the traditional forms of media and how people engage with that. As Aoife said, social media has been great for all of those all those well-being messages, the positive stuff. But I think also even just the change in the language, the one that we use quite often, a corona coaster. That's a cracking little word, because I don't know about all of you, but for me, the last 3-4 months have felt like a complete roller coaster. So actually, just being able to acknowledge that and seeing that banded around social media, how we then engage to the generations or the individuals that don't use social media, I think is a little bit, I suppose it's trickier, and I really don't have an answer for that at the moment. But as has been said before, I think social media has been doing a cracking job for promoting mental well-being, and actually encouraging people to do something different, but also acknowledging that for some people that isn't easy. So not everyone can be cleaning their house, or not everyone can do a new hobby, and you know what, that's okay too.
To carry on, I think that social distancing kind of helped people to create new boundaries that maybe people struggled with beforehand, especially if like you're on public transport and stuff. Just the like overcrowdedness, and like people didn't really mind, but some people, like maybe if you're a germaphobe or you have social anxiety, those kind of things make it hard for you to conduct your daily activities. But now that we kind of all have to space out and respect our own personal space, can kind of help in those situations. And even just in general, I feel like social media has helped us, like maintain like sanity in this time. If we didn't have social media, I really don't know how this whole lockdown would have went. But I don't think it should replace actual interactions that human beings have. Like if we think about things like concerts and festivals, even just like social networking events, like to do that on social media platforms, even like Zoom and Microsoft Teams, it wouldn't be as free flowing and as natural, because some people can't show their charisma through social media and communicate their own personalities as well as in person, because most of human communication is even done through body language regardless of words. So I think as lockdown starts to ease, we should find ways to incorporate both social media and human face-to-face interactions into everyday life for people's safety and then for mental health well-being, because some people like making friends a lot, and making friends through social media sometimes is a bit daunting because you don't want to seem like you're a creep or anything like that. But yeah, I think we should find a balance between the two, but social media has definitely helped us during this time.
Yeah, so I think I've seen some like really positive things going on social media. I don't really do any traditional media because I don't know, it's just sort of phasing out of my life. But I've found that I could pick anyone on like my Facebook friends list or my Twitter list and message them, and they'll be up for having like a proper wholesome chat. And I feel like we're opening up to each other a lot more. We're talking to each other a lot more, and that's just really nice, because I feel like we need deep, intimate connections to feel like good about ourselves. And I know that a lot of people are like innocent of doing like a pet of the day and some pointless information, which cheers me up every morning. My mum posts a picture of the sunset at the beach. So I think it's all about curating your feed so that it's just really nice, positive things. And then that can sort of make you feel a lot more positive about life. And I know that there's a lot of like Facebook live streams going on. So you could join in with some mindfulness, you can join in with some yoga, and you can really like do the sorts of things, and exercise classes as well. You can do all these things that you maybe couldn't have afforded. Maybe it wasn't accessible because you have to drive for like 30 minutes to get to the yoga class, and then you have to spend like £7 on a class. Whereas now you can do it at home, and I think it's made a lot of those positive mental well-being activities accessible for those people who it wouldn't normally be accessible for. So I think that's a really positive change. And yeah, we can connect in ways that we couldn't and didn't before. And I just think it's really nice.
So this is something that TakeFive has really been trying to tackle right from the start, because originally all of our sessions would be run in person. Lots of it would happen with physical board games. So as soon as there was the first case that happened at UEA, my boss and I just went, right, how do we move everything over onto Discord in the next weekend? And that's exactly what we did. We spent the weekend going, I don't know how many people are familiar with the platform Discord. It's primarily for gamers. So it has lots of different chat room functions, which can be both voice and text. And we put all of our stuff onto Discord and started running our online sessions. So we're still running those 3 sessions a week. We're doing our magic and mystery night through the online platforms that those games provide. And people that love gaming will always find a way to put their stuff online. So there's a billion new things for Dungeons and Dragons online. There's lots of work that's gone into Magic the Gathering Online, which has helped us sort of run our sessions, as that's what we traditionally did in person. And then our Friday film night sessions, they've been able to run through Netflix Party. So we've been trying to explore those different ways that we can still engage with lots of other people and make sure that people are still chatting to each other, meeting new people, while trying to make it feel as natural as possible. And like I think quite a few people have mentioned the accessibility, particularly for those who might be a little bit more anxious about using that new technology. Now, we've had some examples where people aren't comfortable to actually speak. So what we've done is we've just made a text channel that people are able to read, and then they just type out what they want to say, and people can respond through voice. So it seems to be going relatively well, touch wood, that it keeps up that way. But we've been having lots of attendance, and we get a reasonable amount of positive feedback. So if anyone else is considering how they could move their stuff online, how they can start making little communities online, I definitely recommend using the Discord platform. And in all honesty, there is almost certainly already a server out there that will provide that kind of connection and sort of connect you up with more people. And actually, the people that make Discord have been very good in making sure that their platform is as COVID ready as it can be. So there are certainly some groups that are working really hard to make sure that daily interaction and that socialization and what I would acknowledge as self-care is still relatively simple to do, because it's literally just clicking a button and then suddenly you're talking to your mates. So yeah, that's hopefully given a bit of a synopsis on how TakeFive has used the new technology and what we'd recommend if others want to try it.
Okay, thank you for all your insightful answers. We'll move on to the next question. Okay, so the third question is, how has the shift to digital mental health services and the increased demand for accessible helplines affected mental health responses? And also, is this a promising field for the future of mental health care to ensure wider access to these services?
So there's an awful lot of components to these questions here. So if I go with the first one first, how has the shift to digital mental health services affected mental health responses? For those that have done it, and I guess this applies to the helplines as well, I think at the moment you've got more people at home, more people who are looking to reach out, and so I would generally expect more access anyway, regardless of whether these were shifted to digital. But of the ones that have shifted to digital, we've seen mainly in most helplines an increase in contacts of around 30%, some recording up to 120%. NSPCC's helpline has seen 50% more contacts. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That might mean that people are more at home and are thinking more about themselves. But it could also be that people being pressured into these kind of bubbles and family bubbles could be like, exacerbating situations that would be previously more easy to get out of. And this digital shift to mental health services it can provide the right opportunities. In the areas of counselling, it could be used to diversify the employment basis, because you no longer have to have a counsellor who lives locally to your practice. You could outsource, perhaps. You could get someone to deliver a counselling service remotely, to do their therapy sessions one-on-one remotely, and they could live on the other side of the country. So I think, you know, for trying to diversify the counselling profession, as one example of perhaps a mental health service, like particularly in terms of ethnicity as well, like this is perhaps a huge win. Is it a promising field for the future of mental health care to ensure wider access to these services? It is, I think, but we have to be careful that it isn't replacing those original services as a way to expand, as a way to retain original services, but also have these other ones. It's good. It provides more diversity. It provides more equality of access, perhaps. But if someone hasn't got a laptop and hasn't got access to the internet, they can't access it. So you still need the original services. You really do in the long term. And what's more, I think Afia was saying it earlier, counsellors can move between sessions if they wanted quite quickly. And if you're in an office in a wider space, you might get more of like a break. You might get to walk from one room to another. You might get this and that. And there are particular health benefits to that. And so I do kind of have a worry that a mass digitalization of mental health services in general, if it were just kept as it is at the moment post-COVID, and there wasn't kind of a willingness to go back to the original services, this could impact particularly negatively on the health of those actually conducting those services. It's not to say that that's necessarily going to be the case all the time. Some people might welcome the change, but it's something especially that people such as myself would have to consider if they were going to move forward with that kind of thing. And indeed, Nightline is moving forward with a remote service email, but it's going to take all of summer for us to get it legally and set up because of, the fact that all of our volunteers have went home now, the fact that there was a lot of confusion at the beginning of the pandemic, and the fact that we're student run is a major disadvantage. So for us, we are going to have something set up come September, regardless of what government alert level we're at. But it might be a staggered service, it might be less frequent, it might be reduced. That is the reality, to be honest, simply because of the situation we are in. And there's also things like, to take into account mental health care. What do we mean by mental health care? We could also mean supported living. We could mean more physical aspects of that. And when you've got rumours of this disease spreading through care homes and things like this, and people who have mental health issues and might be in supported living for that reason, like that interaction, it understandably will change. It will be difficult for those services to react to this, to react to the long-term impact of it. And particularly, I think something that hasn't been mentioned directly so far that is worth mentioning, the COVID pandemic. We've talked so far about it creating new instances of mental health, either it creating positive impacts or negative impacts, but more specifically, we probably need to consider what it's going to do to people who are already suffering with mental health conditions, and how their support is going to change throughout this, and what their lives are going to look like at the end of this, whether they are going to be in a better position or a worse position than they were at the beginning of this. And I think if you put two and two together, they're going to need a bit of extra support, is what I'm saying. So yeah, I'll hand over now because I know I've talked for a little while.
I think you had really good points there, and I think that was really enlightening for me to listen to, because I'm not really coming from a position of observing how people and services that provide mental health are responding necessarily. I'm kind of seeing it from the other side and how people are being affected. I think if I was to just analyze on a theoretical basis how will mental health services be affected, I think, like Jake was saying, it's really important to realize that, firstly, positively, there could be a reflection there of how things have worked previously and how it can be made more efficient based on how remote working has affected this mental health service. But at the same time, like Jake was saying, like they're people, and my friend and I were speaking about this literally the other day, like how amazing is it that people become therapists and really deal with kind of therapists and counselors and deal with emotional traumas and physical and emotional traumas and basically mental health of people, because it does obviously have some level of mental health impacts on them too, obviously, because it's a draining job, as is any sort of caring profession. So like Jake was saying, it's really important to have a service that is not like, it is efficient but doesn't come at the expense of the caregiver. I think for people who were, like, to follow on from what Jake was saying as well, were previously affected by mental health issues, have been extra affected by COVID. Like, I'm not speaking for everyone, but I think a lot of people have been kind of going into relapses of struggles that people have thought they'd overcome prior to the COVID-19 crisis. And like, I think everyone to a level, as Eddie was saying earlier, has been like introspective and reflective. Like personally, I've been forced to be quite introspective as well. And I think that's because for like after a very long time, I've not been half as busy as I used to be, and I've realized, oh my gosh, there's like so much more going on in my head than I initially realized. And so kind of just, yeah, I think it's had an effect on everyone. And I think one thing we do need to be grateful for is the fact that, I'm not sure grateful is the right word, but I think people who are going through mental health struggles at least have a sense of solidarity worldwide a little bit, given the fact that everyone's kind of going through a difficult time. But again, there are levels to that, and you know, you can't really have complete solidarity. So I'm not really sure how responses have been affected, but I think definitely it's had an effect, and I think that's probably going to vary depending on which organization you represent and like what kind of person you are and how you've been affected. So sorry, that wasn't actually very useful, but someone else can continue.
Hi. Yeah, I think that the fact that more mental health services are becoming accessible online kind of makes it good for people that are unaware of how many mental health services are actually out there, and people can find something that actually suits them. So it could be gender specific, race, ethnicity, you know, sexuality specific. And just the fact that more people are, you know, advertising themselves online, it can make things easier for people to find. So maybe when things do go back to normal, they can actually access those services off, like face to face, or even still just continuously online. And also, I think that it does have more promise in the future, because you never know, you might find someone that is the kind of that provides the kind of mental health service that you like, but they might live in a different country, or let's say you speak a different language, they might be sourced from a different country and stuff like that. So it can still benefit people, not just like within the small communities, but worldwide and stuff. And you can provide services to people you never thought you would, and to communities you never thought you would. Yeah, that's kind of what I have to say.
I think, you know, like it's been said before, I think the increase in choice is really helpful, because for some people, seeing someone face to face, that works for them. For someone else, it might be sending an email or a text because you haven't got that face to face contact. But I know my colleagues out in the community, they've been providing almost a full service, just as if COVID kind of wasn't going on, obviously with PPE, etc. You know, so some of the community services, when for the lower level, the less riskier individuals with dealing with mental illness, they may have been dealing initially over a telephone call, or now kind of video conferencing if the individual requests that, or they've got the facilities, because a lot of people that do access mental health services don't actually have access to the internet, etc. But for those that have been at more of a risk, they've, you know, my community colleagues out with the mental health nursing, they've still been going out, they've still been doing face-to-face assessments. You know, the police have still been going out and taking individuals to a place of safety. You know, so all of that has still been going on, despite some of what the media was saying initially, that mental health services are shut down. So that's kind of been going on. And I think one thing that's really important to bear in mind with all of these new services popping up is actually to be a little bit, I suppose that's where our critical thinking needs to come in, because there are going to be a lot of people who are going to see a way of making money out of individuals. And so they may set up digital services selling X, Y, and Z for mental health, mental well-being, etc., but actually that's not what's behind it. But then what's behind it is they've seen a business, they've seen a way into the market, and actually they can then potentially take advantage of vulnerable individuals. So I think, you know, we're going to have to be really, really sort of diligent in our choices. You know, as societies, I suppose, if we see a service that's of help that we want to kind of advertise to our members, again, it's doing that critical thinking. It's having a look behind the organisation and seeing, you know, is this an organisation that's been running for a while? You know, are they a decent organisation? Are they kind of there? Not saying that some of the newer organisations aren't decent, don't get me wrong, but again, it's just about checking out, because, you know, like the internet itself, you know, it kind of goes a bit wild, doesn't it? You can do so much of everything on the internet, and it's just about helping our individuals and the people that we deal with access the right service for them, and also being confident that we're not kind of sending them to the wrong kind of website or the wrong kind of service. Because, you know, there are services out there that will help people who self-harm. They'll help them find ways to do it differently or better or whatever. There'll be people that will encourage people who've got eating disorders to how to maintain that and how to maintain the secrecy. So again, it's stuff that we need to be kind of looking out for when it comes to the digital thing. I think it's a great. I think it's very, very promising, because there's online cognitive behavioural therapy platforms that are very, very good, you know, and individuals are getting benefit from it, and they may have had to wait 18 months or more before they saw a face-to-face therapist. So again, I'm thinking for some people, really, really good, but for others, they're always going to need that face-to-face kind of individual sat in front of them.
Yeah, so I don't really know anything about any of the sort of digital mental health services or any of the helplines that have been going on. But it's always good to make sure that there's services that everyone can offer, so it can't be a bad thing, but I think it should be done alongside in-person stuff.
I think just to add on to what Eddie's saying, like I hear that, and I think there are certain, sorry, I'll turn the video on as well. There are definitely some certain situations where it is very difficult to have anything digital. For example, bereavement counselling. It's very difficult. Like, for example, if someone passed away in a hospice or someone passed away in a care home, it's very difficult to then kind of not have something there where the family can be supported immediately. Maybe in the long run we can have like a continued bereavement counsellor who kind of follows up, but that kind of immediate situation in which someone's passed away and your family, you know, the family, so it's kind of very difficult to then be like, okay, sorry, due to COVID you have to go home now, we have to stay 2 meters apart, kind of deal with it on your own. Like, it's very, and given the social distancing in that situation where family members could have potentially visited, can't, maybe they're vulnerable, maybe they just can't because they live far away and we're not supposed to be traveling so far. So I think definitely, like everybody's saying, some services and some people have really benefited from this, but I think a lot of services have been ongoing, and that has been regardless of the financial impacts of COVID, because, you know, they are very caring services, and also because it is really important for them to continue, and there isn't an alternative solution to, like, there isn't an option to digitalize it, if that makes sense.
So I unfortunately have personal experience with what Afia was just discussing, and I also was actually for other issues was also already accessing student support services therapy programs, and it came just before my final session, and I have to commend student support services on how phenomenally they helped me in that session, and I must say everyone at UEA from my personal experiences in student support, when things moved online, it was fantastic, and it really helped me at the start of the pandemic. So I'm not sure how accessing them is currently working. I imagine it's the same process on the website still, but someone who knows a little bit more about it can hopefully correct me if I'm wrong there. But I would thoroughly encourage any UEA students to make sure that they're accessing that service if they're able to, and hopefully if other services can adapt just as well as student support has, then hopefully there will be fewer issues. Obviously there was already some number of issues in mental health services going on, and hopefully over time, and maybe this pandemic will be the thing that helps those in charge and control those services. Maybe it will push them to work to try and offer more support and funding and things like that to ensure that those services are able to operate as best they can, because all the experiences, I can only speak personally, but all the experiences that I've had from mental health professionals have been fantastic, and hopefully that will continue, and hopefully the online switch won't make as huge a difference as it could, and hopefully that those people will be supported from the tech industry and things like that in making sure that they're able to provide a high quality of support, and at least in my personal experiences that has happened.
Wow, thank you guys. I've learned a lot from that one question alone. But just a quick note to the panelists, could I just ask that you from now on limit your answers to like 1 minute? There's nothing, it's very important. I'm sure everyone else has learned a lot as well, but we still have like a few questions to get through, and I want to get through them and also give everyone a chance to speak as well. So yeah, please limit your questions to 1 minute. And yes, so move on to the next question. So, So COVID-19 has highlighted the racial and socio-economic disparities that have existed within the healthcare system. This enforced a great need for awareness and mental health support for BAME communities. Is my connection bad? Okay, I'll carry on. And then a quote. In fact, 1/3 of COVID-19 patients are from BAME backgrounds, which is disproportionate when compared to the 30% representation in the UK population. So the question is, what can UEA and its societies do to support mental health in BAME communities during and after this crisis?
So, like, my mandate for Nightline prevents me from saying anything that might be termed too politically on this, but I think that statistic, you know, it speaks for itself. That is not, from what the government reports have been saying, it's not a biological reason. It is a social one. And so I think it is important that we do provide that support. In terms of my society, Nightline, it's impossible for us to discriminate on someone given they contact us, and we usually, you know, we have no idea what their ethnic, gender, any kind of categorical makeup is unless they tell us. But we do kind of internally usually do like awareness sessions to keep our volunteers, well, you know, up to date with this kind of stuff. And that's perhaps something that, you know, other societies could do, you know, perhaps like just awareness sessions on like the disparities that people from BAME backgrounds are facing, as particularly due to the pandemic. And I think if that happens, support, even just like support from a friend to a friend, from a society member to another society member, from a committee member to a normal society member, it should, you know, it should flow naturally if you've got a good like kind of awareness there and you've got a will to do so.
I think that was really well answered. Yes, so it's a very loaded question because there's a lot to hit on there, but I just want to address some of the key points, which is what can UEA and its societies do to support mental health in BAME communities during and after this crisis. I think one of the biggest things UEA needs to do, which needs to come from top down rather than bottom up, is definitely pay and hire more mental health staff who are from BAME backgrounds. As I think minority officers, this is something I've been telling the VC and many in the executive team again and again, but obviously there are people who can be saying this more, and there are, to be honest, without being too political, there are people's voices who will be acknowledged more with more privilege. So I think it is their responsibility to say these in the right spaces and in as many appropriate spaces. So, for example, if you work for a staff member and you work closely with the executive team, or you work closely with the head of department, and you have the opportunity to speak on these issues, or you can create the opportunity to speak on these issues, I think it's really important you take these forward. Because to be frank, at the beginning of the year, I'd be saying, oh, we need to talk to the VC, but now it's the end of the year and I have literally 5 more days left of term. I've spoken to the VC, now it's about making him listen and kind of incorporating the changes that we want to see. So that's one big thing. So we definitely need to see a campus with a support system which is catered towards understanding the mental health of BAME communities, and not to even lump BAME together, but we need to understanding Black communities and other people of color communities, Asians, South Asians. And I think that's one big thing. Obviously, representation is another big thing which can have an effect on mental health. When you go to university and you study a subject and no one really no kind of professors look like you, they don't represent you, you don't really feel a role model in the society, as well as everybody is able to adapt, they do, but it does have a negative impact on your mental health. And I think, like Jake was saying, the stats speak for themselves, and I think it's a really good thing that what you were speaking about, kind of just having really fluid conversations and having awareness in society. So as the outgoing president for UEA Society, from day one I kind of made it a priority to create a safe space and amongst my committee, and tell everyone that it's kind of our responsibility to create a safe space sort of environment in which we can talk about different different gender identities and different ethnic identities, and not that we need to speak about that, but if people do want to, that they are able to do so, and kind of have an awareness which just comes hand in hand with educating yourself as much as possible, but also maybe it's kind of not something that can be achieved in a day, but kind of creating training programs, or maybe having that first sort of meeting where the president and the vice president comes together and has 5 or 6 kind of key points they want to tell their community members, okay, these are kind of some of the key issues that affect BAME communities that I've educated myself on. I'm going to pass these on to you, so at least this is a good starting point for you all to sort of educate yourself, and we need to create a space where conversations like this can happen really easily and can happen without hesitation. And I think that's one of the biggest things that have come out of COVID-19, that we do have big cracks in our society and big conversations that need to happen and are happening. I'm going to stop there because, sorry, it's supposed to be a minute.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said, that the heads of departments and of the university need to be more aware. And I think it's just about, like you said, educating themselves, because BAME communities are usually the ones that are, at the front line, that are essential workers. Some of you may or may not know the case of Belly Majinga, who was a train instructor, and she got spat on and then she died within a week due to COVID-19, and her family was not helped in any way, not compensated in any way. And it just goes to show that BAME communities are the ones that are at the front line, but when something happens to us, we have no sort of protection. So I think that that UEA has to actively do something to protect us, to help us with justification of anything that happens to us, believe us and support us. There needs to be more support in these kind of communities, because we, as the statistic shows, are the ones that are most vulnerable, and it is due to social reasons. It's not something that's out of our control. So I think ways that they can do this is to have more conversations between these communities and the people that can actually make a difference. So if communities are saying that we need this, you know, people need to do their best to provide what we need so that statistics like this don't keep happening. It's completely disproportionate. So yeah.
I think, like others have said, it's education. I think it's been very, you know, I'm quite an avid reader of nurse Twitter, and since COVID, since the Black Lives Matters, you know, I think it's a lot more people are actually working out that, you know, as healthcare providers, you know, as nurses, student nurses, doctors, etc., we don't know enough about either the mental health or the physical health kind of within the BAME community and other. So it's about education, and also I suppose being given safe spaces to have the conversations with each other, and you know, and have the discussions and the debates, and actually be educated. You know, I think UEA can certainly offer that to us. And as a society member, you know, I'm now the new Equality and Diversity member for the Nursing Society, and again, I'd like a little bit of direction from UEA. To actually kind of give me a bit of direction as to what I need to be doing with our society, with our members. You know, how can we get the message out? How can we support each other? And maybe societies actually coming together with a bit of a plan and working together, you know, and not reinventing the wheel really, but one society doing some fantastic stuff and other societies kind of falling behind. But like everyone else has said, it's just education, and let's just talk about it.
Yeah, so I know that within Sexpression, even at UEA, we do have sort of mostly white members, because I think the sort of reasoning that we've found is that Black people and people of colour have more pressing issues to deal with than poor quality sex education, so they've never really gotten involved with us. So I don't know what support BAME people need. I don't know like what they can offer. It's not something that I've looked into, so I feel like I should just leave the space for BAME voices to say what they need, and then I can listen, I can help as much as I can. But yeah, I'm not an expert on this either.
Much like Eddie, I'm going to be trying to hopefully use my white privilege to amplify BAME voices, because that's how I view that I can support the BAME community as much as possible, because obviously coming from the background I do, I can't imagine the experiences that people go through. In the UEA sense of what's going on, I've recently been invited to help out with the decolonisation of the curriculum in the history department, which is my degree. So the university is looking, well, at least in history, they are looking to try and address BAME concerns and the BAME student experience as much as possible, and hopefully from the conversations I had with the chair of that group, because it is majority white, because I think there is only one Black history lecturer in the entire country for history. We're going to try and invite people from BAME backgrounds to come in and discuss how they would like to see things done, so that we can hopefully just amplify their voices. So yeah, that's my main message.
Okay, thank you. Again, I just want to highlight the 1 minute limit. We have like 3 more questions to go. I think the next question is quite short, but we have like 2 attendee questions, so I want to answer those, want you guys to answer those as well. So please try your best to limit it to 1 minute. Yeah, so we're on to the next question. So the final question is, okay, what do you hope UEA /UEA SU will do to support students' mental health when uni starts up again?
It's my hope that they would, regardless of content, they would consult the students. I think UEA ACS is all right for this at the moment. I'm not sure how great UEA is. It would be nice to see like a collection of, to be honest, like a collection of like students at societies we've got here, brought together to discuss the kind of issues that are facing students when we return, and that students are considered in any consultation rather than perhaps one executive board meeting to discuss stuff without really talking to the students about stuff and then working on that. I haven't really got a good answer to that question. I'm just thinking out loud. So I'll hand over to Afia now, who probably has a better response.
I think what you said is good. It's just the things that you said already exist. Like I'll just be, I mean, I'm leaving as an officer, so I can basically say what I want. So basically, at the beginning of the year, like given everything that happened last year, with certain students and basically students who committed suicide and passed away, there was a lot of follow-up when it came to having like town hall style meetings with students, with lecturers, with executive boards, on how we can better the student experience around mental health. I think there has definitely been a lot of improvement in many ways. Like student support services is something that I will definitely give my hats off to, because honestly they've done a lot more. But I think at the end of the day, like given the fact that at the beginning of the year, they released an enlightened app in which the BBC came down and did a little cover story for UEA, and in which there was like, I can't actually remember the number, so I won't quote it, but it was something like almost in the millions, I want to say, about how much they're giving to mental health. And at the beginning of the year, we had, as part of Black History Month, we had a panel in which I asked the Vice Chancellor, so can a part of this fund be dedicated purely to, for example, dealing with BAME mental health issues and hiring BAME mental health staff? And back then, in the discussion, everything was agreed upon, and it was like, yes, this is something we're going to look into. This was in October. It is now almost October again, to be honest, and not a lot has budged from that point. So I think one thing that I really hope to see is a sense of urgency on these issues. Like no matter how much we speak on them, it doesn't seem to have that, like that sense of urgency isn't really instilled from the top down. And I hope that in the COVID crisis, though it's had like such a negative effect on so many people, I hope at least this will make them realize, oh my gosh, if something like this happens again, I hope that we're better prepared, especially for BME students. I'll leave it there.
I feel like UEA has to give more power to the students. Like if we are in need of something, like I said before, it kind of needs to be like with urgency, because we have had cases of where people's mental health hasn't been acknowledged in certain situations that arise, and it kind of gets brushed off. I know a few students that have had issues that have come up to the university, and it just kind of gets brushed aside, and their mental health is not considered as to how it will be affected. So if someone like needs to give more power to the students, like the SU maybe. Can you guys actually stop?
And I'm going to talk kind of from a nursing student kind of point of view, and quite selfishly, I'm going to do that because actually I think one thing that, and the UEA does try really, really hard, is actually trying to, I suppose, adapt services for nursing students and other healthcare students who don't generally follow the traditional uni life. We continue into placements into June, July, August. We're on placements over Christmas, and a lot, like even things like you do something different weeks, or when you're coming back with freshers weeks and things like that. Actually, we're either on placement or we're back on our modules, and so a lot of the typical university stuff we miss out on. So I think, and as a student kind of group, a committee, we've been fighting kind of to try and change that, and I know that the uni is trying, but I think it's really important to remember that come September time, actually the student nurses that are coming back into third year, some of them may actually have been on the front line facing COVID, sitting with people who've died, dealing with loved ones of ill patients and stuff. And so actually I think maybe UEA need to be quite aware of that. There's going to be a cohort of people that have been, I'm not saying that people haven't been touched by this, but actually directly touched by this. And we've got our medical students as well, and our occupational therapists and our paramedic students too. So again, I think it's just something that the uni needs to be really quite aware of. And then also we've got our students who haven't been able to opt in, who haven't because of personal circumstances, whether that be finances, children, or health circumstances, not being able to opt in to help out on the front line as well. And that itself is also going to affect, and I know that it has affected individuals' mental well-being and how they see themselves as future nurses, paramedics, doctors, etc. So yeah, I'm hoping that this year we as a society will be a bit more of a voice for the nursing students, and also that the UEA will have a bit more of an idea as to what we've been up to over the last couple of months.
Yeah, sorry, if I could just add to that, jutting in quickly. Just to say what Nightline's doing. We fully recognise that health science students are going to be, in a difficult position. So I just want to put it on record. It is our intention to put all our volunteers who are health science students on break if the virus is still in circulation, so that they don't have to come in and do shifts, because we don't think it's right to put that pressure on them. But that's something we can do. Can't comment on what UEA is doing. Sorry, just
really appreciate that. Thank you.
Toby, did you have anything to say?
Oh yeah. So I just a lot of people have sort of touched on the power to the students front. I actually think that UEA do involve students, hopefully, in a reasonable amount of stuff. I'm lucky enough to be involved in a few sort of student experience committees, particularly within the humanities. So hopefully that will mean that the students' voices sort of are at the front of things. In terms of what UEA and the SU do, I hope that they'll take lots of consideration into the student experience, particularly around freshers and people arriving, because UEA is very good at creating a community and sort of making the campus a home for a lot of people. That was the big impact for me when I was a fresher. And with all these potential restrictions or whatever world we face in September, I think creating that community has to be at the forefront for those new students. So hopefully both the SU will support societies in doing that, and the uni will hope the schools do that.
Okay, so we've come to the end of the main questions. So we have a few attendee questions that were submitted. So we'll go to those. So the first one is, studying from home has had a particular impact on students with responsibilities and parents. Recent research shows those with caring responsibilities are now spending more hours in their care role, whereas previously university was a breakaway. How can we support student parents and those with care responsibility as a student?
I'm not a student parent, so I don't think I can really talk with any specialism on that. But the first thing that would come to mind would be to consider being more lenient with intercalation and things like that. But again, I'd say it needs to be a question put to someone who is a student parent. What kind of support are they looking for? What kind of support would be most useful?
Yeah, I really agree. I think one of the things I will commend UEA for is definitely the safety net policy and for just being understanding even throughout this time. I can't speak for everyone's advisors, but my advisor has been very understanding. Like I have her on WhatsApp and she's like, just message me if things change like drastically, you don't have the time to send an email or whatnot. So I think being understanding and a caring support system to someone who's a carer is really important and can go a long way if you're someone like an advisor and therefore can vouch on their behalf for extenuating circumstances. I think as a friend or as a student, like when you have group work projects and things, just be really considerate of people. But in terms of on a mental health level, I don't think I can speak on this either. So I'm going to pass it on to someone who can.
So I'll come in on this one next. It's just actually I think our experience as a nursing cohort, there's been a lot of flexibility where, you know, for example, we would have had an exam at 9 o'clock in the morning normally, whereas over the last a couple of months we're saying, okay, so the exam the time starts at 9, you have 24 hours to complete that exam. So again, there's been a lot more flexibility. So those that are parents have been able to do their caring responsibility and then take time away for themselves. From speaking to my friends who are parents, I think the greatest support that they've had is their personal advisors, but also other students who are parents too, and actually knowing that what they're going through, they're not alone. You know, they're not the one that's trying to, also the one that has to juggle the home, the kids homeschooling, their own responsibilities as a student at university, etc., etc. And actually, what, you know, from speaking to them, they've said that when they've spoke to other parents who are struggling too, that's probably been the biggest help. And then also the fact that we've had a good bit of flexibility for all of our students, not just the parents, but again, bringing into mind. And our lecturers are very, very aware of people's home circumstances as well. So again, they'll acknowledge, you know, it's hard work bringing up a family, you know, when you're all locked into one house and stuff, and you've got to do the homeschool and you've got to do the dinner, you've got to do etc., etc., etc. So again, I think it's been down to a lot of individuals, but maybe we could link, you know, more parents kind of together in some kind of a support group, maybe.
I think that everyone that's spoken has made some really good points, and I think that main focus on how we can support those students are those ways that the marking policies have been relaxed and people are given more time to write their essays. I know in history, students had a month to write their essay, and then also the 10-day extension as well, which I used to the full extent. To make sure that my work was as good as it could be. So hopefully those extensions, because I know there's also other phases that involve longer extensions which go into August and things like that. So hopefully those will cover those students that have caring responsibilities or are parents. So hopefully we'll get feedback from people in those situations confirming that.
Okay, moving on to the last question. If the slide wants to move. Okay, so I tried to be very mental health conscious in my teaching, but I'm also very aware that as a white lecturer, I can't presume to know what Black and people of colour students needs are in regards to their mental health. Would anyone be willing to speak on the mental health issues that are particularly returning for Black and person of colour students?
Well, if we're going down the list, sorry. Nightline doesn't record this kind of information, and majority of we're very, very confidential and very anonymized. So I can't even begin to answer that because I have an understanding of what students have as mental health difficulties, but I can't prescribe any of them specifically to people who are Black or people who are of colour. So I'm going to just use my white privilege to delegate this to someone who, can answer, hopefully. And I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Okay, I'll
Sorry.
do someone want to say anything? No,
Sorry.
it's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, as a ACS rep, you know, Black people, we do have more or less the same mental health, you know, issues that other people have, but it's just that extra layer of concern if anything happens in regards to our race. Like, obviously, UEA and Norwich is Black people are very much a minority, and you know, there's a lot of people that just have new experiences. Some people that have never interacted with BAME communities or even Black communities before, and I think that lecturers should just be aware of the space that, you know, and the position that Black and people of color students are in, even like international students if they're people of color as well. We're in a new environment, we're in a white space, like, you know, nobody should act oblivious to the possibilities of things that could happen. And depending on what subject you teach, like, which is like geography and international development, there is a lot of like teaching about third world countries and just like terminology used in addressing, you know, countries and situations that other countries are in is relative, should be highlighted, because that is how then your students will address those topics and those situations that they've learnt about, because you're the lecturer and that's who they're going to learn from. So I think it's just about not breeding ignorance and, you know, just making sure everyone is on a playing field, like a playing field. It's not about Black people or people of color wanting to be treated special. It's just we want to be treated equally.
Yeah, I would agree entirely with Morinike, and that's exactly it. Like, it's kind of having the awareness, kind of just having the fact that having the lens that people do have different layers to their identity, and the fact that you're Black or you're brown or whatever your ethnicity is does have its own sort of, does have a layer of identity that it has been said, like, it comes down to race and it comes down to ethnicity. And I think, you know, like, people of color have the same mental health problems, which just in many ways which are expressed differently. For example, like, I know lots of people have turbulent relationships with parents that are maybe just expressed differently because of a cultural lens to it, and how that has an impact on mental health. And I think it isn't necessarily the job of the lecturer to be aware of all those different cases. I think it's just having a general awareness that, okay, if you know, like, the fact that they come from a different culture can have an impact on their mental health in a way that's different to my own if they're a white lecturer. So therefore, let me kind of be conscious of that. And if I don't know, let me ask respectfully and let me see what they need, and kind of, and also not expecting the other person to do kind of any sort of emotional labor entirely. Like, you're seeing a student, for example, who is of color, kind of struggling in your class. They're persistently not handing in assignments or something, I don't know, and you kind of want to and you've asked them the questions that kind of rules out other cases, and you think it's something to do with race or racial incidents or trauma coming from racist incidents. Like, instead of waiting for them to open up, you can make that first step. Like, you know what, like, obviously this is not something I can relate to, but we can talk about this and I can see what I can do to help. Obviously, I'm not an expert on this issue as such, but this is, I guess that's what I would want personally if it was happening to me.
Did anyone else want to say anything on this last question?
Yeah, if I can speak again, unless anyone else wants to.
Go for it.
I'd just like to bring attention to the fact that, speaking on behalf of Headucate now, Headucate usually do like a mind and melanin a session at least yearly, and to whoever wrote this, like, it might be a good idea to come along to that if we repeat that this year, because personally I found that very insightful. We get people from different ethnic backgrounds, different cultural societies, we bring them together basically to discuss what's happening with their mental health. And if you wanted a bit more specific insight, then that might be somewhere to go. Shameless Headucate plug.
Thank you, Jake. Yeah, that is a really good point. We always have a really good turnout to our Mind and Melanin panels. We've done it for 2 years running now, and we have representatives from 7 or 8 different cultural and ethnic societies that just everyone gets together and talks, and there's always a real sense of like belonging there, even for people not of the BAME community. Like just listening to everyone talking and sharing their experiences is just like, wow, you're all sitting there, like everyone's sitting there nodding and clapping slowly and going like, hey, and like really like you can really like feel a sense of like community, and you can really understand like just sitting and going there. So yeah, thank you, Jake, for that. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Jaden for running the panel and hosting tonight, because she's done a really good job. So thank you, Jaden. And thank you to all of our panelists for coming and talking really open and honestly about everything. Jaden, did you want to have the last word?
Yeah, thank you everyone for turning out. The panelists, thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak on this panel and share your very important opinions on COVID and mental health. It's a very, pressing and important issue right now. And thank you for all the attendees for turning out. We appreciate y'all. And
I forgot to say, just thank you for everyone that has already filled in feedback on the SurveyMonkey. If you haven't already, there's a link in the chat box bar. Just be really honest. We want to know what you thought. And if not, there's a little QR code. It's the one here. If you want to use that one to get to the feedback. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And if you want to find out more about Headucate events that are going on and everything, there's more information on our social medias. And we've also added a couple of the really good helplines and charities that you can go to for support of mental health and wellbeing. Some of them are quite specific, but some are quite general. But you can always find more information on the NHS website, or if you go to Mind UK, that's always a really good one. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.